Some stories begin with a gentle goodbye, others with a gut feeling that something is wrong. This one began with a father's love so deep that it could sense danger even when the world saw nothing amiss. It was a gray, drizzling Thursday afternoon in the quiet suburb of Maplewood. The streets were lined with old oaks, their leaves shimmering with rain, and the air was thick with the scent of wet earth. For most families, it was just another day, but for David Miller, it was the day his world would change forever. David was a single father, his life revolving around his daughter, Lily. Lily was 12 years old, with sparkling blue eyes and a smile that could light up the darkest room. She had been born with cerebral palsy, and though her body was frail, her spirit was fierce. She loved music, painting, and the stories her father told her every night before bed. Since David worked long hours as a mechanic, he had entrusted Lily's care during the day to a local home for children with disabilities. The Maplewood Care Center had come highly recommended bright walls, friendly staff, and promises of compassion and safety. David had visited often, always greeted by cheerful nurses and the sound of children's laughter. But lately, something had changed. Lily had grown quieter, her laughter less frequent. She flinched at sudden noises and clung to her father a little longer each evening. When David asked her what was wrong, she only shook her head, her eyes clouded with worry. "Are you sure everything's okay at the center, sweetheart?" he'd asked one night, tucking her into bed. Lily hesitated, then nodded. "I'm okay, Daddy, just tired." But David's heart was uneasy. He noticed bruises on her arms, small, round marks that Lily couldn't explain. The staff brushed them off as accidents, the result of clumsy play or muscle spasms. Still, the feeling gnawed at him, a silent alarm he couldn't ignore. On this particular Thursday, David left work early. He told his boss he had a bad feeling and needed to pick up Lily himself. The rain fell harder as he drove, his hands gripping the steering wheel, his mind racing with worry. When he arrived at the Maplewood Care Center, the parking lot was nearly empty. The building looked the same as always, cheerful murals on the walls, a rainbow painted over the entrance. But as David stepped inside, he was struck by the silence. No laughter, no music, just the distant hum of fluorescent lights. He signed in at the front desk, but the receptionist barely looked up. "You're early," she muttered, her eyes glued to her phone. David forced a smile. "Just wanted to surprise Lily." He walked down the hallway, his footsteps echoing on the linoleum. The doors to the playroom were closed, the windows fogged with condensation. He pressed his ear to the door, listening for the sound of children's voices. Nothing. A chill ran down his spine. He pushed open the door, his heart pounding. What he saw inside would haunt him for the rest of his life. The playroom was nothing like David remembered. The bright posters on the walls seemed faded. The toys scattered across the floor were broken and dirty, and the air was thick with a musty, sour smell. The room was eerily quiet. Save for the faint hum of a television playing cartoons, no one was watching. David's eyes swept the room, searching for Lily. He spotted her in the far corner, slumped in her wheelchair, her head bowed. She looked so small, so fragile, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. Around her, a few other children sat in silence, their faces blank, their eyes dull. A young woman in scrubs one of the caregivers sat on her phone, barely glancing up as David entered. Another staff member, a heavy-set man with a bored expression, lounged in a chair by the window, scrolling through social media. David's heart pounded. He crossed the room quickly, kneeling beside Lily. "Hey, sweetheart, I'm here." Lily looked up, her eyes filling with tears. She tried to smile, but her lips trembled. "Daddy." David hugged her gently, feeling her body shake. He glanced at her arm's new bruises, darker than before, and a scratch on her cheek. He turned to the caregivers, his voice tight. "What happened to my daughter?" The woman barely looked up. "She fell. Happens all the time." David's jaw clenched. "And the other kids? Why are they all so quiet?" The man shrugged. "It's nap time. They're tired." But David could see the truth in the children's eyes: fear, exhaustion, and something deeper: resignation. He wheeled Lily out of the room, his mind racing. In the hallway, he knelt beside her, brushing the hair from her face. "Lily, talk to me. Please. What's going on here?" Lily's eyes darted to the closed door. She whispered, "Don't tell." "They get mad." David's heart broke. "Who gets mad, honey?" She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Please, Daddy, don't make them mad." David hugged her tightly, fighting back his own tears. He realized then that he had missed the signs: Lily's silence, her flinching, the bruises. He had trusted the center, trusted the smiling faces and the promises of care. But now he saw the truth. Something was very wrong. He carried Lily to the car, buckling her in gently. As he drove home, she clung to his hand, her grip desperate. That night, David sat by Lily's bed, watching her sleep. He thought back to the day she was born, how the doctors had told him she might never walk, never speak. But Lily had defied every expectation, her spirit shining through every challenge. He had promised her, from the very beginning, that he would always protect her. He remembered the first time he brought her to the Maplewood Care Center. The staff had been so welcoming, the rooms so bright. He had believed them when they said she would be safe, that she would be loved. But now, he saw the cracks in the facade, the staff's indifference, the children's silence, the unexplained injuries. He wondered how many other parents had missed the signs, how many other children had suffered in silence. The next morning, David called the center, demanding answers. The director, a woman named Ms. Harper, assured him that everything was fine. "Children with disabilities often bruise easily," she said smoothly. "Our staff is highly trained. You have nothing to worry about." But David couldn't shake the feeling that he was being lied to. He decided to keep Lily home for a few days, watching her closely. Slowly, she began to open up, her laughter returning, her eyes brightening. But whenever he mentioned the center, she grew quiet, her body tensing with fear. David began to investigate. He spoke to other parents, some of whom admitted to having similar concerns. He searched online for reviews of the center, finding a few vague complaints buried among glowing testimonials. He even drove by the center at odd hours, watching as staff members came and went, their faces hard and hurried. One afternoon, he received a call from another parent, Mrs. Chun. Her son, Michael, had also come home with bruises and nightmares. "I tried to talk to the director," she whispered, "but she said I was overreacting. I don't know what to do." David's resolve hardened. He knew he couldn't ignore the signs any longer. He began documenting everything: photos of Lilia's bruises, notes on her behavior, recordings of their conversations. He promised himself that he would get to the bottom of this, no matter what it took. And so, on a rainy Thursday, David left work early, determined to see for himself what was happening at the Maplewood Care Center. He had no idea that what he was about to witness would haunt him forever. David's hands shook as he dialed 911, his voice barely steady as he described what he'd seen inside the Maplewood Care Center. The dispatcher's calm voice was a lifeline, promising that help was on the way. But as he waited in the car with Lily, every minute felt like an eternity. Lily clung to him, her small hand gripping his so tightly it hurt. "Daddy, are they coming?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes, sweetheart. The police and doctors are coming. You're safe now. I promise." Within minutes, the wail of sirens cut through the rain. Police cars and an ambulance pulled into the parking lot, lights flashing. Officers moved quickly, entering the building with purpose. Paramedics rushed to the car, gently checking Lily's vital signs and asking David quiet, careful questions. Inside the center, chaos erupted. The staff tried to maintain control, but the officers were relentless, moving from room to room, checking on every child. Some children cried when the police entered. Others simply stared, their faces blank with shock. David watched from the car as more parents arrived, drawn by the commotion. Some ran inside, frantic with worry. Others stood in the rain, clutching each other, their faces pale with fear. A detective approached David, notebook in hand. "Mr. Miller, can you tell me exactly what you saw?" David described the filthy playroom, the bruises on Lily and the other children, the caregiver's indifference. He showed the detective the photos he'd taken, his voice growing stronger with every word. They didn't care. They just sat there, ignoring the kids. "My daughter was terrified. She's been coming home with bruises for weeks." The detective nodded, his face grim. "You did the right thing calling us. We'll get to the bottom of this." Inside, the investigation moved quickly. The police separated the staff, questioning each one individually. The children were examined by paramedics, who documented every injury. Social workers arrived, comforting the children and taking careful notes. David was allowed to take Lily home, but not before a doctor checked her over. "She's dehydrated and underweight," the doctor said quietly, "but she'll recover with proper care. You did the right thing getting her out." That night, David sat by Lily's bed, watching her sleep. He felt a mix of relief and guilt. That she was safe, guilt that he hadn't acted sooner. He replayed the day's events in his mind, wondering how many other children had suffered in silence. The next morning, the phone rang. It was Mrs. Chun, her voice shaking. "David, thank you. The police called me last night. They found Michael in the same room as Lily. He's safe now." "I don't know how to thank you." David's eyes filled with tears. "We have to stick together." No more silence. The news spread quickly. The local paper ran a story about the raid, quoting parents and police. The community was shocked. How could such a thing happen in their town? How had no one noticed? But as the investigation continued, more details emerged. The staff had falsified records, covering up injuries and neglect. Some children had been left alone for hours, others punished for crying or asking for help. The director, Miss Harper, insisted she knew nothing, but the evidence was overwhelming. David was called to testify, his photos and notes becoming key evidence. Other parents came forward, sharing their own stories of bruises, nightmares, and unanswered questions. Tekasagri, drawing attention from state authorities and child welfare advocates. Through it all, David focused on Lily. He kept her home, showering her with love and reassurance. Slowly, she began to heal. She smiled more, laughed at his silly jokes, and even started painting again. But the scars remained. Some nights, Lily woke up screaming, her body shaking with fear. David would hold her until she calmed, whispering promises that he would never let anyone hurt her again. The breakthrough came when one of the caregivers, a young woman named Maria, broke down during questioning. She admitted that she had seen the abuse, but had been too afraid to speak out. "They threatened me," she sobbed, "said I'd lose my job, that no one would believe me." Her testimony was the final piece the police needed. Arrests were made, and the center was shut down. The children were placed with their families or in safe foster homes, and the community rallied to support them. David felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He knew the fight wasn't over. There would be a trial, and Lily's recovery would take time. But for the first time in weeks, he felt hope. He looked at Lily, her head resting on his shoulder, and whispered, "We did it, sweetheart. You're safe now." And as the sun rose over Maplewood, David knew that their lives would never be the same, but that together, they could face anything. The days that followed were a blur of police interviews, medical exams, and sleepless nights. News of the raid at Maplewood Care Center spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the community. Parents gathered outside the center, desperate for answers, their faces etched with fear and anger. David spent every moment by Lily's side. She clung to him, refusing to let go, her eyes haunted by memories she couldn't put into words. The doctors confirmed what David had feared. Lily was malnourished, dehydrated, and covered in bruises, some old, some new. She flinched at the touch of strangers, her body tensing at every loud noise. The other children told similar stories. Some spoke in whispers, others not at all, but their injuries spoke volumes. The police and social workers listened, documenting every detail. The caregivers were questioned, their stories unraveling under scrutiny. Miss Harper, the director, insisted she knew nothing, but the evidence was damning. David's anger burned hotter with every revelation. He sat in meeting after meeting, demanding justice for Lily and the other children. He showed the authorities his photos, his notes, the recordings he'd made of Lily's fearful whispers. He refused to be silenced, even when the center's lawyers tried to intimidate him. The investigation uncovered a pattern of neglect and abuse that stretched back years. Staff had falsified records, ignored injuries, and silenced children who tried to speak out. Some caregivers had even threatened the children, warning them that if they told their parents, things would get worse. The community was outraged. Parents who had trusted the center with their most vulnerable children now felt betrayed. Protests erupted outside the building, demanding accountability. The local news ran story after story, shining a light on the horrors that had been hidden behind the center's cheerful facade. Through it all, David remained Lily's rock. He held her hand during doctor's visits, comforted her through nightmares, and reassured her that she was safe. Slowly, Lily began to heal. She smiled more, laughed at his silly jokes, and even started painting again, her favorite way to express herself. But the scars ran deep. Some nights, Lily woke up screaming, her body shaking with fear. David would hold her until she calmed, whispering promises that he would never let anyone hurt her again. The trial was long and painful. David testified, his voice steady as he described what he had seen. Other parents and children spoke, their stories painting a picture of systematic cruelty. The jury listened, their faces grim. In the end, justice was served. The caregivers were convicted of abuse and neglect, sentenced 2 years in prison. Miss Harper lost her license and faced charges of her own. The Maplewood Care Center was shut down, its doors locked for good. But for David, the real victory was Lily's recovery. With therapy, love, and time, she began to reclaim her life. She made new friends, returned to school, and even joined an art class for children with special needs. Her laughter returned, brighter than ever. The community rallied around the survivors. Neighbors organized fundraisers to help with medical bills. Local businesses donated supplies, and volunteers offered their time to support the families. A new center was opened, run by people who truly cared, with strict oversight and regular inspections. David became an advocate, speaking at town meetings and on local news, urging parents to trust their instincts and never ignore the signs of abuse. He worked with other families to create a support network, ensuring that no child would ever suffer in silence again. Through it all, David and Lily grew closer than ever. Their bond, forged in pain and strengthened by love, became unbreakable. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, watching the sun set, Lily turned to her father and smiled. "Thank you, Daddy, for saving me." David hugged her tightly, tears in his eyes. "You saved me too, sweetheart. You're the bravest person I know." As the stars appeared in the sky, David knew that their journey wasn't over. There would be challenges ahead, scars that would never fully fade. But together, they could face anything. And in the quiet of that moment, surrounded by love, David realized that even in the darkest times, hope could shine through. The months that followed brought a gentle transformation to David and Lily's lives. The wounds, both visible and hidden, began to heal, though the memories of what happened at Maplewood Care Center would never fully disappear. Still, each day brought new hope, and the community that once trusted blindly now stood vigilant, determined never to let such horror happen again. Lily's recovery was slow, but steady. With the help of a compassionate therapist, she learned to talk about her fears and nightmares. She painted pictures of bright gardens and smiling faces, her way of reclaiming the joy that had been stolen from her. David hung her artwork all over their home, each painting a testament to her courage and resilience. David, too, found a new sense of purpose. He became a voice for the voiceless, speaking at schools, churches, and community centers about the importance of listening to children and trusting your instincts. He worked with other parents to create a watchdog group, ensuring that every care facility in the county was regularly inspected and held to the highest standards. The town of Maplewood changed as well. The scandal at the care center had shaken everyone, but it also brought people together. Neighbors checked in on each other more often. Teachers paid closer attention to their students, and parents became more involved in their children's lives. The new care center, built with input from families and advocates, became a model for others across the state. Lily made new friends in her art class, children who understood her struggles and celebrated her victories. She learned to trust again, her laughter ringing out as she played in the park or painted in the sunlit studio. David watched her with pride, grateful for every moment they shared. One afternoon, as they walked home from the park, Lily slipped her hand into David's. "Daddy, do you think I'll ever forget what happened?" David squeezed her hand gently. "Maybe not, sweetheart, but you're stronger than what happened to you, and you're never alone." Lily smiled, her eyes shining with hope. "I know, because I have you." David knelt down, looking into her eyes. "And I'll always be here, no matter what." As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, David felt a deep sense of peace. He knew there would be challenges, Ahead bad days, setbacks, moments of doubt, but he also knew that love, courage, and community could overcome even the darkest of times. The story of what happened at Maplewood Care Center became a lesson for everyone. To speak up, to listen, and to never ignore the signs of suffering. It was a reminder that sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who refuse to look away. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, trust your instincts, protect the vulnerable, and never underestimate the power of a parent's love, because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply refuse to give up.